Hi, I wanted to update you on future episodes and what's going on here at Richer Soul. This is the first episode I have recorded since mid-June as I went on a long vacation to explore Italy. We had a great time, and I'm amazed at how much they could do thousands of years ago and how much people have not changed. We recently finished the last coaching call episode, and going forward, we're going to meet people who are living abundant lives and helping others to do the same. I'd love to hear feedback from all of you, and don't forget to sign up for my email list at richersoul.com. No worries about spam. I rarely send emails, but it's a great way to know when something exciting is going to happen. I'm in the midst of writing the Richer Soul Handbook, and it will be sent free to those on the email list when it's ready. Today, we're going to meet Scott Alan Turner, who became a millionaire by age 35. More about him after the intro. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is the financial well-being to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom and abundance. Don't forget to check out the Facebook page, facebook.com/Richer Soul. I share a lot of interesting articles that I've read on that page. And I would love to hear from you and any questions and feedback you have to improve the show. Also, if you hear me say something that's incorrect, please let me know. Thanks for all your support. You can contact me at rocky@richersoul.com. Today, we're going to meet Scott Alan Turner. He started out in massive debt with lots of obligations, and within 13 years turned his life around and became a debt-free millionaire. Let's find out how he was able to achieve that kind of success. Welcome to Richer Soul, Scott. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Rocky. My pleasure.
Scott, let's start at the beginning. What was money like when you were growing up, and how much did your parents or the school teach you about being financially savvy?
Zero knowledge from the school. I remember that. We grew up in, I have three older brothers and an older sister, but we grew up in a small Western Massachusetts town. It was very tiny. My wife grew up in a similar town of 2,000 people. My dad worked for the town and my mom raised the kids. And when my older brothers and sisters went off on their merry way, she worked part-time at a coffee shop. The biggest lesson I got growing up about money was save. And that was really the only lesson I got. My parents rented their entire lives. Even though we were not city dwellers, we lived out in the country. Most of the homes had one story where the primary family lived and then a second story, which were often rented out. So we rented, and then they rented their entire lives. So I didn't learn about mortgages, insurance, any of that stuff. They always bought used cars. My dad had a pension. We didn't learn about investing, 401ks, any of that stuff. So the one lesson I got was save a portion of what you earn. And I started working very early. I would say 9 or 10 is when I started my paper out. Been working ever since. So I've always been encouraged to save from them. I certainly didn't follow that, but that's what they encouraged me to do.
Everyone always wants to spend. So what got you to start working at such an early age?
The people who owned the home that we lived in, they had kids as well. One of the daughters of the family, she had a paper out, and I think she just ended up doing something else, so it became available. And I don't remember, it was a long time ago. So I think my dad or mom may have encouraged me, said, hey, why don't you pick up the paper out that Debbie was the girl who lived downstairs. Debbie's not going to be doing it anymore, so you can go do that. And I think sometimes when they went on vacation, I would fill in for her anyways. It was just a natural progression. My mom and dad worked very hard for their entire lives, and I think I got that work ethic from them.
So there wasn't so much a desire to make money. It was just you were kind of started off and did it because that's kind of what people did.
Yeah. I mean, the opportunity was there, and I was encouraged to work. And from there, the paper route, I got started in a restaurant washing dishes when I was able to do that based on the age you can start working. And from there, worked at a gas station, pumping gas for a while. And during summers, I would mow lawns, paint for one of the neighbors. Winters, I would shovel snow. So I did all these odd jobs at the encouragement of my parents.
And what did you do with all that money that you made as a kid?
It went into a savings account. Once in a while, I got to spend some of it. My dad would always say, you need to save it for later on, save it for school if you want to go to college, which I ended up doing. College was funded by partial scholarship. My parents paid for some of it. I had a bunch of student loans. And then some of that money I earned when I was younger growing up, that went to schooling as well.
So you had some discipline at this point, and your parents did teach you to save, which is one of the major steps involved in accumulating wealth. So from that standpoint, it's pretty good. And there's a lot of lessons, I think, to be learned by working as a kid. You learn a lot about how to deal with people, how to show up, even when you don't want to. And I had a paper route. You go out in the rain and the snow, and you go out every day of the week. If you have a 7-day route, it doesn't matter how you feel. You just get it done.
Yeah, there's no days off. My paper route was 6 days a week. I'd get home from school, pick up the papers at 3:30, go deliver them, and then Saturday morning, same thing. They'd arrive 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, go out and deliver all the papers. You're right, rain, snow, shine, whatever it happened to be.
See, you were lucky. My papers showed up at 5 in the morning. They needed to be delivered before I got to school. And Sunday meant that you got the 2-inch paper. It was 2 runs because I couldn't carry them all.
Yeah, those papers were heavy. We didn't have to do the Sunday papers. Those were specialties and not part of the deal. So people had to go out and buy those on their own.
The cool thing is when I had a paper route when I was 13, and that's a long time ago. I think we're thinking late 70s, early 80s. I was making $50 a week cash back then with tips. And you think about that today, that's a ton of money for a kid to have and enjoy and have a good life with.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. My paper route was very small because it was a small town. I had max 40 houses to deliver to. So my weekly take may have been a couple bucks.
Did people tip? Half of my money came from, a good chunk of my money came, I think, from tips.
Yeah, all of mine did, but it wasn't significant based on the small volume. And I could do my route in probably 30 to 40 minutes, if I remember correctly. Not that long.
No. It's a shame they don't have that anymore. Kids don't have that sense of being able to do something at an early age and make a difference.
Well, I'm going to challenge my kids. We live in a big subdivision here, and you're right, there's no paper routes. I have twin 3.5-year-olds, and being an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking about how can I introduce these kids to business at an early age. I always got ideas floating in my head. We've got a really tiny backyard. We grow a bunch of herbs. My thought is, as soon as these guys, boy and a girl, as soon as these kids are old enough, they can start their own little herb stand and they can go out down in the center of the neighborhood, sell herbs. Got the girls down in the corners occasionally selling lemonade. So why not?
Absolutely. It's always find something and train them young. It's definitely the way to go. So you went to college. Did you go for finance or something different?
I have an IT degree. I moved from Western Massachusetts to South Georgia, a bit of a culture shock, but I love the warm weather and the campus opportunity that was provided to me. So it was a small town to the big city. Went to school, got my degree in 4 years, and then I wound up in Atlanta looking for a job in IT. Took me a while to find one, but that was kind of my career path. I was in corporate life for, say, 9 years.
So you get out of college and your parents taught you to save. So you must have been the perfect person coming out of college and diligently following those lessons.
Oh, I had credit card debt racked up about a month prior to graduating college because I'm going to be free. I'm going to be able to have these bills myself. Mom and dad aren't going to see them anymore. 3 to 4 weeks ago before graduation, I went out and bought about a $250 or $300 guitar. So, now the savings was encouraged, but it was not followed once I was out on my own. Certainly not.
So how are you going to do it differently with your kids so that they listen and when they leave, they'll save? Or have you not thought that far out?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it with the experience of seeing, we live in a very affluent neighborhood, and I get a little bit, maybe it's because of my growing up and upbringing and how I went through things, where I see the neighborhood kids are gifted brand new BMWs at age 16. We didn't have any of that growing up. My wife didn't either. I was gifted a beater car with 85,000 miles on it my senior year in high school, which I drove up and down the East Coast to college. Not a brand new BMW. There's a girl down the street. She's got a Land Rover. I shake my head as I drive by it each day. We are committed in our family. I've heard this, other people do this as well. They say, all right, my kid's name is Bram. Bram, if you go out and earn $1 working somewhere, I'll match that dollar for dollar for whenever you want to get a new vehicle. That's one thing that people do. My idea is I'm going to take the money that my original car costs, do the adjustment between what it is in today's dollars, whatever that happens to be, and give the equivalent, maybe, if I'm nice, to my son or daughter, which is going to be a beater. That's all they're going to be able to get. So that's what I'm willing to give them. I want them to know the value of $1, the value of hard work, the value of struggle, not being gifted things and being spoiled, rotten kids. They're very young, and then we get some toys, but we're doing our best to not spoil them and expose them to, here's how the world works. Teach them savings and spending stuff. Here's where you go to the store. Here's what a receipt is. Little things that they pick up on.
That's wise advice. I've seen some of those kids who were gifted the BMWs about 7-8 years later, and they need to be gifted another BMW because they're still living at home. Still haven't figured out how to live life and expect everything to still be handed to them, and have trouble with work because you have to show up and do it. So,
yeah, I'm a bit of a hard nose, and I think that's just because we were raised differently. And so when my kids come to that and say, "Oh, Daddy, I want the new Coach purse or whatever," it's like, no, you want to go out and earn some money. That's what I had to do.
Again, quite wise. And that's what we've done with our kids. And we did the 50-50 on the car, saying, you come up with half, we'll pay for half. We did run into some issues because we're not rural, but it's not like you can walk to work around here. And it's even hard there's not that many close jobs. So it was hard for my kids to work. And we wanted to make sure they at least had a safe car. So we kind of helped out a little bit more. And my wife wanted a new car. So she had her old car but we made the kids pay for, I made my daughter pay for part of it so that she understands that there is a cost associated with this.
Yeah, and that's great. There's nothing bad about raising productive members of society that are not spoiled. No bad can come out of that.
Absolutely. So you get out of college and you started spending. So what happened next?
Out of college, what did I do? I got my first job. Probably within 6-9 months, I went out and bought a brand new vehicle because I had arrived. And got a new job. Got to go out and get a new vehicle. It was a brand new Jeep. And along with that, charged up a bunch of money on a alarm system and stereo that goes into it. One of those guys who had like way too much sound system for the vehicle that was in. That was unnecessary. A year after that, maybe 2 years, I upgraded to an even better vehicle because, again, I had done well at my career, accelerated getting salary bumps and new responsibilities at work. So, again, I had arrived. I deserved this brand new vehicle, $49,000 to be exact, financed $33,800 of it. So I had an $800 a month car loan. Then I went out and bought a house at age 25 because my coworker, who was at the same salary level that I was at, she went out and bought a house. And my reasoning was, we make the same amount. You can afford a house. Clearly, I can afford a house. And then my boss encouraged me, buy as much house as the bank will let you. And I almost did, came pretty close to that.
So why do you think he encouraged you to buy as much house as you could afford?
I think that's very, very common. It's still common today. The bank is going to give you way more money than you should be allowed to spend on a house. As consumers and people who want nice homes, the average size home compared to what it was in 1970. I think in 1970, the average size home was just under 1,000 square feet. And today it's 2,500 square feet, if not more. So houses have gone crazy big. And as consumers, we want the bigger thing, the nice thing, all the nice appliances, the hardwood floors. I wanted the exact same thing. I wanted a really big and nice backyard, which is what I ended up getting. You know, it's very common for people to believe what the bank says, believe what their boss says. If you don't have a financial background or any financial sense, I certainly didn't. You believe other people because they're older and wiser. They should know, right?
They should. I think, though, before you believe somebody, you should make sure that it's the person that has done what you want to believe in. In other words, you don't ask an overweight person how to lose weight. You don't ask someone who's living paycheck to paycheck how to become wealthy. You have to make sure you take the advice from the right people. And it seems like there are so many people in society who have a reason for you to buy that large house. So the person selling it, the real estate agent, is paid a commission, and that commission is proportionate with the amount of money you spent. Of course, what do they want you to do? Buy a bigger house.
Sure.
Mortgage broker, same thing. He doesn't care if the mortgage gets paid or not. All he cares about is the bigger the loan, the bigger his paycheck, making his quota, get his boss off his back. And then your boss says, oh, look, this guy's young. He's got all these debts. Guess what he's going to do? Work harder. Because he has to. He's got to pay the nut this month. It seems like we have a ton of people who are pushing us to spend, and a whole lot of consumerism that promotes that, because all those people along the way get paid to essentially do that.
Yeah, you're right. And really the only person that you can trust is an independent third party who has no financial incentive whatsoever, what you do one way or the other. And those are people are difficult to find. And if you don't know to seek them out, you do seek the advice of the neighbor, the brother, the third cousin, the auto mechanic, whoever, who's got the next hot stock tip, whoever it happens to be. You don't know what you don't know. And I didn't know at the time.
I think it's very hard to find those wise people, because if you're that smart, wise, and you're wealthy, there's a good chance that your time is valuable. And so to be able to, as a young person, get access to that is difficult. And that's why I think what you and I do is important, because this is allowing people who may not have the money or the ability to connect with those types of people to have the opportunity to go ahead and do that and to learn. And in this case, it doesn't even cost anything.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And then sometimes we think we're much smarter than we really are. We don't know the complete story, especially when it comes to home buying. You take the really basic math. Here's my salary per month. Here's my take home. Here's what the mortgage is going to be. All right, this seems to fit in that. There we go. That's enough math. We've done it on the back of a napkin, and it seems like it's going to work. And I think far too many people do that. They don't think about all the other expenses that go along with it. And suddenly they're in over their head. They don't have an emergency fund, which I did not have when I bought my house. There's so many other things that can go wrong.
Well, absolutely. And then there's the electric bill and the furniture bill and the heating bill and the cable bill and all those other things that aren't calculated into your mortgage payment, that you don't really think about and you don't really know about until you move in and you see what they all add up to. Exactly.
The moving bill, and then you got to buy the vacuum. And then if you have a yard, you got to buy a lawnmower or pay somebody to mow it. Shovels. I mean, those go. It's an endless. It's an endless money pit. Not that it's bad. I mean, I love being a homeowner and I encourage it, but you got to get the pieces in place first.
At this point, you've got the nice house, the nice car. Life is good, right?
On the outside, I look amazing. Just after I moved into my house, and I drained my bank account to make the down payment, went out and bought some furniture on one of those no plans, no money down, no interest, no payments, whatever it was, to load up the house with amazing looking furniture, because every 25-year-old needs a 6-seat dining room set and full-blown china cabinet for himself and his cat. I had a cat at the time. Made no sense.
I don't know. It might be good for getting a date, the women. Oh, look, this guy, he's got good taste. He's got a place for me to eat.
Yeah, he's got a china cabinet. He's got it going on. So I realized at that point, this is not the greatest place to be in. And at the same time, I was commuting about 35, 40 minutes a day in Atlanta. One of the radio personalities on the show, his name was Clark Howard. He's a consumer advocate. I started listening to him after I saw his name on the billboard. That was my financial awakening in life around age 25. I would listen to him every day, 2 or 3 hours on the radio. He would talk about, here's why you need an emergency fund. Here's why you should pay down your debts. Here are the best credit card or travel deals are some of the things that he talks about. Here's the right way to invest. Here's the wrong way to invest. And he would go down these different topics every day. And I was like, oh, I did that wrong, did that wrong, did that wrong, did that wrong. Within a short period of time, I listened to him. I ended up selling my expensive car, took the equity that I had in that, paid cash for a clunker, used truck, had 35,000 miles on it, paid $6,500 for it, and started building up my emergency fund and just throwing all the spare dollars towards my mortgage to get it paid down. I was paying PMI at the time too. I think I had a 90-10 loan. I put 5 or 10% down, so I was paying PMI. I started throwing money. I didn't know anything about PMI. No one had taught me about that. I thought it was normal.
PMI is private mortgage insurance. If you don't put down 20%, you have to pay for PMI. And actually, lately, I heard a story. Someone said, oh, we have these loans. We'll pay the PMI for you. And actually, what they meant to say was, we'll charge you a higher rate that's even higher than the PMI, but you won't see that, and we'll pay your PMI. So always be careful of what people are offering to help you with. I listened to this. Clark Howard probably has millions of listeners. And yet, not all of them heed his advice and became a millionaire like you did. Something had to be different, or something clicked, or something was there that made you actually take that action to say, I'm going to sell my fancy car and I'm going to change my life. That's not normal.
No, it's not. And I think it was a combination of fear. Everyone needs a healthy dose of fear when they sit down and start reviewing their financial situation as to what could go wrong. I was in a mortgage, expensive car payment, zero savings, single income, no emergency fund, which is a recipe for disaster. I mean, any one thing could go wrong and I would be toast at that point. I lost my job. All right, I have no way to pay for anything. That was my rude awakening there. It's like, you are in a bad spot, dude. You better do something about it. I hated selling the car because I took an $11,000 loss on it after only driving it for about 12 or 18 months. Yeah, I know some people are thinking, cry me a river, dude. You're driving a $49,000 Porsche. Yeah, but I was living paycheck to paycheck. So
well, that's the American
just like
way,
everybody else. Yeah.
Isn't it? That's what everyone's doing. Look at them. They live in a big house. They drive a Porsche. I should have one too. No, he's broke.
Yeah. So I made the extreme decision. I was going to get rid of that car. I was going to go out and buy a piece of junk truck. And I was okay with that. And it turned out to be a good thing. I met my wife when I didn't have a lot of money and I was driving the piece of junk truck. And I know that she liked me because of me, not because I was driving a fancy car. So that was one of the side benefits of driving a lousy vehicle.
So did you have support when you made this decision? What did people around you say when they saw you kind of going from a high level of success in 1 second, and then the next thing you know, people would look at you and go, oh, he must be falling apart?
I think the people that I was around at the time, they would ask me, why'd you sell the car? Or where's the car? And I would just give them a funny answer. It's like, I traded it in for a house, was what my answer was, which was essentially true. I had a expensive house and expensive car. Well, I traded the car in for a house is what it came down to. So I kind of laughed and rolled it off, and that usually ended the conversation. No one really dug too deep about, why did you get rid of your car? They didn't say, oh, are you not doing well? Are you not making enough money? Because I still had my job. It still paid well. I was still doing well at the company and still moving up the corporate ladder. From that standpoint, that was still going good in the corporate world. And then friends and family, they really didn't pry too deeply. So I didn't have to answer the hard questions about what's going on, dude.
But it's good. At least you had an excuse ready to go and you kind of made fun of it. You handled the situation.
Yeah. And I think that's an appropriate response for someone who's deep in debt, maybe like my situation, or even has more debt. And maybe you've got the expensive car. Maybe you got the expensive car payment and you're considering, what are people going to think? And the people who love you and hang around with you and are friends and they're going to be friends for life, they're really not going to think anything of it. Yeah, maybe for a split second. Oh, you sold the car. Why you sold the car? Well, I'm trying to achieve financial independence. Or I'm trying to save up for this amazing vacation and trying to get rid of this car payment in order to do it. And the true friends are going to be the ones that support you 100%, not bug you and not cast you off. And if they cast you off, I would classify that as a good thing anyways. You may not want to be around those people anyway, because they're probably dragging you down.
So how did it feel the first time you got into the truck after driving the Porsche?
Well, it sure did not have the get up and go as the sports car did. It was fine. I got used to it pretty quick. I was big into landscaping at the time, making the yard look nice. The truck was actually a little bit helpful to do that, so I could throw a couple bags of mulch in the back of it after going to Home Depot or whatever. It really didn't bother me a whole lot. The other nice thing about it was I never had to wash it. Whereas the sports car, it was black. I would be out at the car wash every 1 or 2 weeks, getting the pollen off and the dust. I will never own another black vehicle again. The truck was old, dirty, and I don't think I washed it for an entire year.
That's one of the things that I don't think people think of. When you buy these expensive things, they become an encumbrance on you. Now I have a fancy Porsche, so now I have to wash it every week. And now there are 2 weeks and money goes into that. You can't just go to any car wash, right? Because you might scratch the paint. So now you got to go to the fancy car wash or have someone do it by hand and then get it polished. And the money keeps rolling after that decision.
It does.
When you don't have the fancy things, you don't have to worry.
It's easier when you have a used vehicle that's already scratched. When I go to the gym now, I have a used vehicle still, which I've been driving for 10 years now. When I go to the gym, I see in the far end of the park. Well, just the other day, my wife and I were out. I don't remember where we're going, but we were driving through some parking lot someplace. And we're like, oh, there's a Bentley, a $200,000 car all by itself in the far end of the parking lot, because we know you can't park a Bentley next to my car. You'd be freaking out about getting a ding in it. Or somebody who drives a nice Corvette. I see a lot of Corvettes on the road these days. Very nice looking sports car, but you got to worry about getting it scratched. What car wash can I take it to? I can't park it under a pine tree because the sap might fall on it. All these different things that go on. Junker, who cares? Scratch my car. I'm not going to notice. I'm not going to get it fixed.
You have nice people at your gym. At least they're not taking up 2 spots.
I've seen that before too. Yeah.
That's when you pull in next to them with your junker. Oh, it's amazing what we do. So you get rid of the car, you start to get more financially stable. And what happens next?
Yeah, about this time, I was approached by, this is where my entrepreneurship journey kicks in. A couple guys that I worked with starting a company. I was in IT. I had a lot of web development skills, and that's one of the skill sets they needed to build their company, but they didn't have any money. So they said, hey, we'll give you ownership, an equity stake in the company if you come to work for us. I said, all right, it sounds like a good thing, because I liked the work that I was doing, and the appeal of being an owner in a business was nice. And I started down that route. I would have my corporate job, worked daytime at that, and then in the evenings and weekends, I would spend my time working on this side business. Then I went on for about 3 years. That was my entire life, work. 7 days a week. I had a girlfriend who I saw a couple days a week. Not many friends, because I was working all the time. And I was okay with that because I enjoyed what I was doing. About the 3-year mark, girlfriend dumped me. She's like, you work all the time. I'm sick of you. I'm out of here. The grind of working 80, 90 hours a week after 3 years kind of wears on you. So, absolutely. And I wasn't getting paid for my side business. we were growing it. So we were reinvesting some of the money. I never got a paycheck during that time. Never made a dime for the first 3 years. Then my dad came down with prostate cancer. Cancer, it's kind of a wake-up call. He worked through it, but anytime that the C word makes an appearance in your family or friends, somebody close to you, it's a bit of a wake-up call, either for the rest of your life or for a period of your life. So that was kind of a low point. And I was like, I don't like my life, and decided I'm going to quit my corporate job. Well, that's what I was planning on doing. Called up my business partner, said, here's what I need to live on. Here's my mortgage. I need this for insurance. I need this to eat. I need X number of dollars per month. That's the bare minimum I can get by on. Can you pay me that? Or do we have enough money to support me? And he got back to me later the day or the next day. He said, yes, we can do that. And it was a 65% pay cut from what I was making at my corporate job just to pay the bills. But at that time, I had a 6-month emergency fund built up. I had been saving. I had paid down my mortgage, no PMI, started investing. So I had a really good cash cushion. Good thing going. And then I went in and resigned from my corporate job. It was a freeing experience being able to do that. Just go to work on my own. I now worked from home, normal business hours. It was great. And then just shortly after that is when I met Katie, who would eventually become my wife.
What I talk about is leaping with a parachute, where you can make a jump knowing that you're not going to get hurt. Clearly here, you put the time and effort into this side business that allowed you to be able to make that choice and to walk away without worry, so to speak, which is always nice, knowing that you've got somewhere to land. And although you're making a fraction of the money, you still knew, and you were living well below your means at this point, so you could do it. Had you still had all the other stuff, it wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If I had paid the minimums on my mortgage, if I had kept the car, I mean, I don't know how much emergency fund, I wouldn't have been able to do it. No, it would have taken years and years more to be able to make up that income because my expenses would have been so much higher. And it was peaceful knowing the worst case. What is the worst case scenario? I always ask this myself with any situation. If we're getting into something new or somebody calls into my show, they're like, well, what is the absolute worst that could happen to me? Well, I've got a 6-month emergency fund. I'm single. I could unload the house. I've got a bunch of equity in it, so I could unload it pretty quick. Even at a loss, I'd still end up taking some money out of it. I could go back and find a corporate job because I had a lot of skills in order to do that. From that standpoint, I felt I was pretty secure in my decision to take that huge pay cut and go do my own thing.
I'm assuming it was a success?
It was. I was with that company from the year 2000. I finally left in 2008. Once my wife and I got married, we got married in 2005. We started a business, and from that we started another business. The second one that we started, the income eventually eclipsed the business that I was running with these other two guys. So I ended up leaving them behind. My wife and I ended up selling that one in 2014. We ran it for 7 years.
I think for a lot of people, the question they have is, how do I start a business? What business should I go into? Getting started seems to be the most difficult part for many people. Do you have any advice for people who want to start a side gig? Now everyone's talking about starting an internet business. What kind of advice can you provide them?
The first business that we had was based on internet sales. We did some in-person stuff too, but the majority of the sales came through the internet. So I've been doing it a long time. Yeah, the barrier to entry for an internet business is very low. The business I started with my wife, we started for $7. That was for a domain name. And we grew it really, really big. But that was because I had a specific skill set, being able to program websites. She had a specific skill set. We built a training company to teach architects and general contractors about green building, energy efficiency design. So she had all this domain knowledge, and I had all these skills on how to deliver that domain knowledge and sell it via the internet. So it was a bit of combining superpowers in order to do that. Would have never been able to do it without her. And as somebody who's out there thinking, what do I do? I like to encourage people, write down everything you know how to do and know how to do well, whether that be, are you a good writer? Look at your current jobs, your past jobs for the past number of years. Are you an accountant? look at what do you want to do? What are you passionate about? What's going to keep you motivated? I don't know of any get rich quick business ideas. So many people expect, I've started a business. It's been 3 months and I haven't made any money yet. My first business, it took me 3 years to make $1, to put that in perspective. But that early on investment was what allowed me to, quote unquote, retire early. I work now because I want to, not because I have to. I work from home. I get to spend time with my kids. So all the benefits came about all that front loading of time and energy and effort that I did years and years ago, and the sacrifice that went into that. So the good stuff comes down the road, not within the first 6 months. So you figure out what you're good at, what's going to keep you motivated, and figure out where those two mesh. It might start giving you some ideas on what you should focus on.
One of the things that always holds people back is fear of failure. You've had some businesses that haven't gone well. What advice can you provide people about dealing with failure?
Yeah, I've had 8 different companies. 4 of them never made $1. A couple of them lost money. So one business I had with some friends, we took out a small business loan, spent all the money on some projects, and then we had no sales, no revenue, and had to pay all that money back. So I actually lost money on a couple businesses. Yes, people are absolutely going to fail in business. That's what I like to tell them. Yeah, you're going to fail. Okay. It's what my financial planner years ago told me. The business didn't fail. What you got was an education. He was right. If one business fails or one idea fails, one product line fails, you take that and you apply it to the next one, the next product, next business line, next service. If you have a bad employee and you've made a mistake there, all right, take what you learned and apply that to the next employee, the next business. The number of times you're going to fail as a business owner there's a lot. There's just no way around it. Learning from them and growing from them and not quitting is what separates the people that end up being successful and those that just give up.
So it's learning from your mistakes, continuing to get back up and try again, and making that commitment to keep going step by step and not giving up.
Yeah, you can't succeed for 2 reasons. You're not going to succeed if you don't start. So you're going to start. And then you're not going to succeed if you quit. So you got to keep on going. That's not to say, keep blindly throwing all your free dollars. Don't cash out your 401k or your investments, and we're just keep funneling money into this cupcake shop, for example, and we're not selling any cupcakes. You open up a cupcake shop in the middle of a desert. All right, there's no point in funneling money into that. You're never going to have any customers. That's a silly idea. But looking at what can we make this business grow? How can we make this business grow? Does it make sense to put more money in? And the other part of failure is seek out those who have achieved what you want to achieve, who've gone through the stuff, and pick their brains. Read books, watch videos, get training courses, go to legitimate seminars. There's a lot of, I call them scaminars out there where people are just trying to push products and sell stuff. If you see the Rolls Royce, the mansion, the fancy clothes, and the lights out, run. I mean, that's not a legitimate product. Get coaching, mentors, all that stuff. Take people out to lunch. My wife got into real estate recently. She's got a commercial real estate development degree, but she took out friends who she knew had rental properties, took them out to lunch, picked their brains. And she did that a bunch of times, asked a bunch of people, how do you get into rentals? Where do you buy? What do you look for? All these different things. And she learned a ton of information, which she can apply to her rental business.
That's very wise advice. You've got so many resources. Most of those are relatively free or low cost. Doesn't cost a lot to buy someone a cup of coffee. I advise people to do that a lot. If you know what direction you want to go, then go find people who are the experts in that direction and ask them about it. It's funny, the other day I was reading a book and they said, if you go ask the people who are kind of in the middle top, you're much less likely to get a response than if you ask the people at the top. They said the same thing for dating. If you're in a bar and there's a girl who's a 10 and there's a girl who's an 8, you have a better chance with the girl who's a 10, which is kind of contrary to conventional wisdom. But the reasoning behind it is because all the guys are afraid to go talk to the top. And so they're more willing to listen, whereas everyone's trying to get to the middle people and they're bombarded and they don't have the time.
Yeah, because the middle people are trying to get to the top.
Correct.
So they're trying to ask the people at the top too. I found people are extremely helpful and they want to share information. Now, they don't always have the time, but if they do have the time, they're more than willing to do it. I love going out to lunch with people, coffee, whatever, and just they want to know about internet business or whatever, let them pick my brain. It's fun. It's a good time for me because I like helping people. Most people just want to help people. It comes around in 10x later on down the road. Helping people with the expectation, all right, I'm going to get something back. That doesn't work, but just helping people for the sake of helping people, it makes me feel good when I do it. Yeah, somewhere down the road that may turn into something, it may not, but that's not the reason I do it.
Absolutely. And I do much the same, and I encourage others to do that very much as well. Is that how you got started in the podcasting on finances?
My wife and I sold our business in 2014, and because of all the history I had listening to shows and reading books, I've worked with a financial advisor since we've been married, so almost 12 years working with a fee-only certified financial professional. Learned a ton of stuff from him. And always in the back of my mind, I thought, I really like this topic. I'm passionate about it. I'm interested. I could read about it all day long. So the opportunity presented itself once we were free of one of the companies that we owned. I can sit on the beach and I can drink margaritas for the rest of my life. Or I can go start another business in this industry or do this thing. I had an awesome robot lawnmower I wanted to create, but I don't know anything about robotics. And I thought, I really like money. I really like personal finance. I would love to be able to teach people to not make the same mistakes that I did. And that's how I got into podcasting and blogging and how I got my content for the book that I wrote. All came from that love of the topic. And it's a great example. I started out, here's something I was passionate about. I knew a lot about it, built this business, and it's done pretty well so far, and I'm really just getting started into it, which just blows me away. Having a great time.
That's awesome. I think this is one of the things that you have to look at when you go ask people for money advice. Is the person selling you advice made all his money selling people advice, or have they actually gone through the mistakes? Have they walked the walk and built wealth through a variety of different ways and gone through the struggles and can help you go through the struggles as well? And I think that's something you've done. It's something I've done.
Yeah, it's one thing to go to school, college, get an education in financial planning, and then you get out there and you start teaching people or working people based on your education. Yes, you can get experience that way. I've gone through the school of hard knocks and made all the mistakes, or made most of them. I have not been bankrupt. That's the one thing that I don't have experience of, but I've had the debt, the credit card debt, the student loans, the car loans. I've made more terrible investing decisions than I can possibly remember. So all these different mistakes that I've learned from, grown from, and now hopefully will not repeat in the future. And that allows me to share that information. I share it openly, just about everything that I've gone through, because that helps people learn. And it's relatable. When you find somebody, oh, you're in debt too? And, well, I'm in debt. Well, how did you get out of that? That sounds pretty helpful. Maybe I'll try to achieve that as well.
Absolutely. So now you're at a point where you have to figure out the balance between time and money. Because at this point of your life, it seems like you have an abundance of both. How do you make decisions on the balance between those two nowadays?
Years ago, my wife and I implemented it's called death by schedule. It's an Excel spreadsheet that we've got, and we just carve out our days. So I've got one which lays out, all right, here's what time I'm going to get up in the morning. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what my mornings are usually my best focus time. So I'll tend to do my writing or recording in the studio during those times. Afternoons tend to be a bit of a free-for-all. I like to leave them open to do different things in case something comes up. I don't try to bind myself down. But I allocate enough time for my kids. They're home Mondays and Fridays. We put them in daycare Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday just so they get exposure to other children, social interaction, learning stuff. But I get to see my kids a lot. I get to see my wife and I have worked from home together for over 10 years. I see her all the time. So family life is great. We get to do things if we want to blow off a day and go somewhere. So for me, I recognize I only have a limited amount of time. And as an entrepreneur or business owner, even as employees, the trap that we get into is if I just make enough, if I just get this raise, when I get that tax refund, when I get that next job, if I just get this new deal, if we could just sell more, if I have that employee, it's just on and on and on, and you never get there. And I realized this, it took me a long time to realize this. You never get there. You really never will. So you got to break that cycle and realize, all right, today is what I got to work with. And those things, they're nice, but probably never going to get them. So let's just carve out some time today. Let's enjoy it. And let's see if we can create some type of, I don't call it balance. I don't believe in work-life balance, but I believe in work-life integration. A place where you have a good family life, a good home life, a good spiritual life, a good financial life, rather than sacrificing one for the other with the long-term hope of something that's very, very elusive and very, very few people ever achieve.
That's one of the things I talk about. You have to have all of those different things in balance. There can be times when one part of it gets out of balance for a short period of time, but overall, all of those things that you mentioned need to be in balance, or you are going to have other troubles down the road. I think at one point you said you had a time imbalance and your girlfriend left. Same thing happens in marriages if you don't spend time with your wife and kids. Same things happens with financials. If you're spending all your money and you're out of balance, it creates a whole nother set of problems down the road.
After our kids were born, they're 3.5 now, we were working on selling one business. We were building another business, which is mostly on me because it required a lot of computer work. And I was back to work in 12, 13, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. And this went on for 9 months, and my wife and I were gay. It was absolutely a miserable time in our marriage. I mean, I just worked all the time. And then once we finally got away from that, things kind of settled down. I don't know if it was worth it. I don't know if I'd build that business again. We still own it. I don't think I'd go that hardcore. It'd probably take a little bit longer to do it, or maybe do it a little bit differently. But it was a tough patch. We got through it. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody.
What about outsourcing some of it?
It was possible to do that. We invested time. When you're starting a business, you get a couple choices. You can invest your time, sweat equity. You can invest your money in it, or a combination of both. And I didn't really know enough about the technology that I was using as a learning process for me to go out. It was going to be really, really expensive to outsource it and get somebody to build what we wanted to build. And we weren't willing to put in that financial commitment, not knowing the other side, what the revenue was going to be on.
So you were reducing risk, basically. And that's
essentially, yes,
an acceptable thing to do. Along those same lines, and I think people struggle with, are needs versus wants. And I know that I think in one of your recent episodes, you talked about a story and a saying, which was just one more day. How do you handle your needs versus wants?
I've recognized, at least in my own life, I like stuff. I think most people agree, yeah, we like stuff. But over the years, I guess as each year passes, I realize how much less and less I like stuff. When I was early on and younger, I owned a lot of stuff. We talked about the furniture and buying stuff and the nice cars. And as I've aged, I'm like, I don't really like cars that much. I like that I can not worry about my car breaking or getting scratches and dents. I look around my office or my house and I see all these like little knickknacks and things. And what around here actually makes me happy? Or if the house is burning down, what am I going to grab? The laptop, the kids, and the pets, and that's about it. And I would kind of be happy if everything else burned down, and I probably wouldn't replace it. So I've learned to be content with situations and experiences, being around my family. We love food. We're big foodies, so we like to cook and go out to eat. And those things I found bring me much greater joy than fancy clothes. I'm a musician, so I've only got a couple guitars, and I know people who have 20, 30, 40 guitars. Well, you can only play one at a time. So I've learned to be content with the ones that I've got. Adding more is not going to make me happier than I am. I've also learned, as my income has increased over the years, from having very little when I took that big pay cut to achieving financial independence at a really early age, the more I have had and the more I've accumulated, my happiness has pretty much stayed the same. And people who don't have money, they don't buy into that. They won't believe you. It's like, oh, no way. If I had an extra $10,000 a year in salary, I'd be like way happier. And I found in my own life, and I've seen in other people's lives and the stories that I've read from the super wealthy as well. The more money you have, your happiness does not escalate along the same hockey stick or however you want to describe it. More stuff, not going to make you happy. Yeah, maybe for a day, maybe a week. But the new car at the end of 6 months, 9 months, a year, then it's just something to get from point A to point B and something else to maintain. That the new car smell goes away.
It does. And I very much have experienced the same type of experiences with happiness. And I would almost say that we're at a point in our life a couple of years ago where I just wanted to get rid of everything. We actually paid somebody to help us clean out the house. And I just came back from vacation, and it's the number one goal again is, you know what? I think we still have too much stuff. Let's go through and clean out this house and get rid of all this stuff that requires me to take care of it. Because now I'm taking care of stuff that I don't even care about.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fun. And if you've ever had to go, I've had to clean out 2 estates. And when you clean out an estate, you quickly come to realize how much junk you have and how useless it is. And when you start filling up dumpsters, you're like, I'd rather do this now in my life and clean it out and not have to worry about it and not be beholden to all these things that don't seem to give me value. So I think those are wise lessons. Now, clearly, there's a certain amount that you have to get above income-wise to pay your necessities and your basics. I think it's also a matter of living below your spending, because if you're living above your income, you're going to be in trouble no matter what. So it's keeping those things in line and being able to do that.
Yeah, if you can commit to, as your salary increases or you get bonuses, putting away 50% of every increase, then you'll build wealth. So you get a 5% raise, all right, 2.5%, we're going to save that. Because what normally happens, and what happened to me, is the income goes up, so does the lifestyle. And then the income goes up again, and then so does the lifestyle. And for me, it was bigger and more expensive apartments and better vehicles, not necessarily clothes, but those 2 things ate up huge, huge quantities of my income when I was single. And then got married. We realized, all right, we're not going to do that. We're going to save a large portion of our income. We don't experience a lifestyle creep based on where we are today.
That is something that's difficult to overcome. And that's one of the things I recommend to people is to do exactly what you said, which is to split your raise. And if you keep adding that to savings, 2.5% over 10 years becomes a 25% savings rate. And if you throw in a couple of things that you've paid off and you don't have a mortgage anymore and a car payment, you throw half of that into your savings rate. It's not hard to get to a very high savings rate and not even miss it because you never kind of technically had it to begin with. And then when you have that big financial cushion underneath you, then life becomes very content.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you're like me. We don't have separate accounts. My wife and I, we only have joint savings. Everything comes and goes out of the same account. We each spend what we need to spend. If there's a big purchase, we kind of say something to each other. But I think we trust each other with money and there's no issues. I get yelled at every so often because should be like, I just heard you bought another house. I'm like, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. Because it's business, I'm like, oh, that's just business stuff. And she goes and she buys what she wants. And when she wants stuff she can have, she likes to have some of the finer things. She's like, I work hard. I want some finer things. Okay, go have them if that's going to make you happy. But I guess I don't know if everyone still does that. I'm hearing more and more that people like to keep their money separate. And I would just assume that would cause even more tension between a husband and wife.
My take on that has always been, we got into marriage knowing we're not going to get divorced. So that was the plan going in. And when I hear that people have separate accounts, they can have it for different reasons, but it's like having a prenuptial agreement. You're going into the marriage planning for it not to work out. I never wanted that. My wife never wanted that. Part of that is we've seen people go through that. My parents stayed together forever, and so did hers. But friends, family, siblings didn't want to experience that. So, we're going into this, and we're going to make it work. You're not leaving me. I'm not leaving you. So we're going to combine our accounts. It's going to be part of the deal. What we have is his and her allowances. That's what we call them. We get the same amount each month. Here's your money. Go spend it on what you want. You want to go buy a purse that's expensive. If you got it in your allowance, knock yourself out. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to complain about it based on the cost of what your purse is. And then if I want to go out and buy something, I tend to buy more expensive items, but I'll save up my allowance for a couple, 3-4 months so that I can afford something bigger if it's something that's not going to fit into the 1 month allocation that I get. We've done that for 12 years and it's worked out. We have very, very few money arguments. And as you said, when you get into the big purchases that are outside the scope of that, if we need a home item, for example, then we'll discuss that and see where that fits into the plan.
Well, it sounds like you are doing well marriage-wise. And so I wish you well for that. While we're on some of these subjects, a couple things we also like to talk about is health. You become wealthy, and that means you're probably going to live a lot longer. And you want to enjoy that life. I just got back from Italy. One of the things in Italy is you walk a lot. Being physically fit to be able to walk up and down the hills and up and down the staircases and through all the alleyways, it was good. How do you take care of your health?
Yeah, just on that topic, I remember when we went to Italy and the tour guide after dinner every night, she would have us go on a 30-minute walk. It's just like to work off the food and get you in the right mood and relax for to go to sleep that night. So it was interesting. Yeah, health has always been important to me. Earlier on, when I was younger and single, I pulled a back muscle in college. So I've got a slightly messed up back. It's not too bad. But if I do not lift weights, after about 3-4 weeks, my back will start hurting and I will not be able to sleep through the night. So that is one thing that just keeps me at the gym. The other is I have very young kids. They are 3.5. I want to be around for them. So I don't eat junk food all the time. I do eat it occasionally. I have one massive cheat meal a week where it's like anything goes. Normally we're eating healthy though. And part of that's for them so that I'm around for the high school graduation, hopefully the college graduation if they go that route. If they get married, I want to be there for that. So that's important to me. I find it gives me a lot more energy. When you start looking at people who have success or wealth, there's some common denominators and themes in their lives. And one of them is health. They take care of themselves. They wake up early. Maybe they do yoga, meditation. That ain't me. I mean, not any of that stuff. I'll go out and walk in the morning because I like walking. I used to run, but I don't like sweating anymore. Or the feeling of my lungs burning because we're here in Texas where it's like super hot. And then I'll lift weights 4 or 5 times a week. And I feel that gives me good back health, energy. There's no negatives from that.
And just to put things in perspective, your kids are 3.5. How old are you?
I'm 44. So I'm an older parent. So I have even more to be healthy for.
Well, I just want to give context to the listeners so they can see how that all fits in. While we're on the topic of kids, If you had to leave your kids 3 pieces of advice for a abundant, successful life, what 3 things would you tell them?
The first piece of advice would be, whatever you do, do it the best. I think there's a quote. I want to say, I'm big into music. I want to say the lead singer was Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden. And I think the advice he got from his dad was, I don't care if you want to wash windows, just be the best dang window washer that you can be. I think no matter what career path my kids choose, if they set out to be the best and do it well, they're going to achieve success at it. Outside of that, forming good, healthy relationships, putting time and energy into lifelong friends. My mom, she's still in the same town that I was born in, just turned 80. She's had the same friends since high school. I'm jealous of it, but it blows me away. She's friends for life. A little bit envious of her. I think that's a great thing. It contributes to long life as well when you have those good quality relationships. Third, be wise with your money. Have a plan for it. And if you can follow your plan, you'll build wealth and achieve great things.
That's awesome advice. Thanks for sharing that. One last area I'd like to touch on is spirituality. I tend not to tell people what to believe, but they should find something and believe. How has spirituality worked in your life?
I am a Christian now. I was not born in a religious household, even though I got thrown into vacation Bible school occasionally during summer. I was in my mid-20s, just after I'd gotten into my home, and this church opened up down the street. They met in a community center once a week and decided, I'm going to go check out church. And they were looking for somebody to build their website, which is what I did. It's like, okay, I'll volunteer because I like that stuff. And I just enjoyed hanging around with them. And we would play basketball on Saturday nights before we set up church. I got to know those guys. And that was my really first exposure to religion and Christianity. And from there, I got into a Christian singles group at a different church. That's where I met my wife. My wife's dad is a pastor. They were missionaries. So my wife was raised early on in Indonesia. And we attend church now. Our kids go to Sunday school each week, learn little songs. And it's a huge part of our life. The vast majority of our friends we've met at church. And it's been a blessing. I feel like God has blessed us abundantly. And yeah.
Thank you for sharing. It's one of the areas that I touch on, and I think I'm going to spend more time as we talk to guests in that particular area, because I think being part of something bigger than yourself and connecting is a very important part of life.
Yeah, it's been a huge part of my life. I would not have met my own wife otherwise. I do not think I would have the life I had today if I'd not been exposed to that and that church hadn't opened up down the street. It's been a crazy ride.
On your podcast, you do give a lot of practical financial advice. What's the number one problem people tend to come to you with?
Number one is investing. Investing is made out to be a very complex topic by those that are selling products. So I try to break it down in simple terms that people can understand. The book that I authored, 99-Minute Millionaire, was how to get started investing and peeling back the layers on things that are said, things that are sold, and the academic studies behind disputing some of the information that's out there. So I get a lot of people, I got a 401k or I got a Roth IRA. I don't understand the investment options in it. Can you help me with that? Or how do I get started investing? Why should I start investing? Because there's so many different options out there. So people really look for just the really simple basics as to, what do? I don't get it.
What do you tell people as the basics to get started?
For a super young person, I've got college age listeners, 19, 20, 21. I like to keep it simple. Just go pick out one of the apps that are out there. Acorns is a great one. And then I think Clink is another one. And they just take little bits of money out of your account each month, and it builds that savings muscle, and it puts it into investments that are based on your risk tolerance, your time horizon, how long you plan on keeping that money going. Those two particular apps are based on a fancy term called modern portfolio theory, which is based on academic research. It's just proper way to spread out your money with a reasonable amount of growth. And if you just stick with that plan, it's the one that I've been doing for 15 years now. After losing $40,000 doing it the wrong way, now I try to teach people, here's the proper way, in my belief, to invest. So that's the easy way to get started. 401k, again, keep it simple. They're target date funds. They're not all great, but if that's an option, that covers your bases there as well. And same with a Roth IRA.
The biggest thing is just get started and just
Yes.
start investing. And don't worry so much about where you're investing as long as it's not costing you. You shouldn't be spending a fortune to invest. You shouldn't spend anything to basically invest. You should be able to invest for free without a lot of fees as you get a pot of money growing over time. Learn what you need to learn. And then at that time, it's more appropriate to put your efforts into how to better invest the money you have. But when you have a small amount of money, it really doesn't make that much difference where you invest as long as you're not crushed by fees.
Yeah, as long as you're in something well diversified. Don't go out and buy Snapchat. I keep telling people that. So I read all the articles. All the millennials out there running by, I use Snapchat, so therefore I should buy Snapchat stock. And Snapchat has tanked recently, so that didn't work out for anybody.
I own Facebook.
Okay.
And well, I bought Facebook after I figured out what it was. Facebook is nothing but a marketing platform, and they are constantly selling you, and people pay for all those ads. And so they have a strong revenue model behind it. And it's actually worked out well for me as a stock, but I don't recommend stock. So don't take my advice. It's silly because I've lost tens of thousands in stock. So do your due diligence. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I think we've covered a lot of topics. It's been a great time.
Thank you for joining us. So people want to learn more about you and learn from your wisdom. Where can they find you?
Yes, my website is scottallen, ALAN, Turner.com. And you can read my blog articles. There's a link to my podcast up there as well. So please check that out.
And I encourage you to do that. He has a lot of financial wisdom on his site and in his podcast. You can learn a lot from him. Thank you for joining us today, Scott.
Thanks, Rocky. My pleasure.
I hope you were able to pick up some pearls from Scott's journey. We talked about many of the same core topics I laid out in episode 1. If you've not had a chance to listen to that episode, I encourage you to go back and listen. Scott also has a podcast and he dives more into the practical money questions, and I encourage you to check him out at scottallenturner.com. I have some really exciting guests coming up over the next few weeks, so look forward to chatting with them and learning a lot more on this journey. Thanks for listening today.